In this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 MLB games happening on April 19, 2026, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 10 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 5 MLB games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start: if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Tampa Bay Rays versus Pittsburgh Pirates. There's something about a Sunday afternoon rubber match at PNC Park that just hits different. The Allegheny River sitting right behind that right field wall, the spring air finally starting to cooperate in western Pennsylvania, and two teams that have already given us a 6-run beatdown and a 13-inning war in the first 2 games of this series. Pittsburgh took Game 1 with a convincing 5-1 victory behind a dominant pitching performance from Bubba Chandler, with O'Neill Cruz launching a go-ahead 2-run shot into the right field seats that honestly looked like it was hit off a tee. Then last night, in one of the wildest games you'll see all season, Tampa Bay clawed back from a 4-0 deficit after a rain delay knocked Paul Skeens out of the game, eventually winning 8-7 in 13 innings on a Cedric Mullins 2-run homer. So here we are, the series split at 1 apiece, and the Pirates send their most reliable arm to the mound in Mitch Keller. Here's the thing about Keller that doesn't always show up in the headlines. He's the kind of pitcher that won't blow you away with highlight reel stuff, but he will show up every single time you need him to. The man has thrown at least 175 innings in each of the last 3 seasons before this one, like clockwork, and his earned run average has basically lived in the same neighborhood year after year. This season, through 4 starts, he's been even sharper than his usual self, carrying a 2.86 earned run average with a 1.23 WHIP, and 3 of his 4 outings have been quality starts. The one rough patch came against Washington, where the Nationals jumped him early, but even that didn't shake him. He bounced back and threw 6 scoreless against the Padres in his next outing, needing just 75 pitches to get through 6 frames. When you have a pitcher who's been doing this for years and shows no signs of slipping, you know exactly what you're getting. That kind of reliability is gold in April, when half the league's rotation is still trying to find its footing. Now let's talk about what he's facing on the other side. Shane McClanahan is one of the most talented left-handers in all of baseball, and honestly, I mean that. When he's healthy and in rhythm, he's a legitimate Cy Young contender, a 2-time All-Star with electric stuff and a fastball that can touch the upper 90s. But here's the part that matters today. McClanahan hasn't pitched a full regular season game since August of 2023. Let that sit for a second. He went under the knife for Tommy John surgery in 2023, spent all of 2024 rehabbing, then suffered a nerve injury in his triceps during spring training last year that cost him the entire 2025 season and eventually required another surgery in August. That's nearly 1,000 days between regular season appearances. He finally returned to the mound this year and has made 3 starts before today, and while flashes of the old McClanahan have shown up, the Rays are clearly managing his workload with extreme care. Through roughly 13 innings this season, his command has been inconsistent, walking 7 batters in his first 2 starts alone. Manager Kevin Cash has been pulling him early in every outing, and there's no reason to think today will be any different. When a pitcher is being eased back like this, you're essentially getting 4, maybe 5 innings of starting pitching before the bullpen door swings open. And that plays right into the hands of this Pirates lineup, which is legitimately dangerous right now. O'Neill Cruz is having his best stretch as a major leaguer, batting .310 with 5 home runs and 7 stolen bases, crushing the ball with exit velocities that have registered as the hardest in all of baseball this season. The man hit a 119-mile-per-hour double against Washington earlier this week, the hardest hit ball in MLB this year, and he looks like a completely different hitter from the guy who limped through 2025 with a .200 batting average. Then you've got the rookie everyone is watching, Connor Griffin, the 19-year-old phenom who the Pirates called up for the home opener on April 3rd, became the youngest position player to debut on opening day since Ken Griffey Jr. in 1989. He just signed a 9-year, $140 million extension, the largest deal in Pirates history, and the kid isn't even old enough to legally buy a beer. He's raw, sure, but the energy and electricity he brings to PNC Park is undeniable, and he's already flashed the power and athleticism that made him the consensus #1 prospect in the sport. Beyond those two, this isn't the same anemic Pittsburgh lineup that finished dead last in home runs in 2025. The Pirates went out and got Brandon Lowe from the Rays in a trade, signed Ryan O'Hearn as a free agent all-star, and brought in Marcell Ozuna on a one-year deal to be their designated hitter. Ozuna cranked a home run with 2 RBI just last night, and Spencer Horwitz had 3 hits in Game 1. Brian Reynolds is still Brian Reynolds. This is a lineup with legitimate depth from top to bottom, and they've proven it by going 8-4 this season when listed as the favorite. With Keller on the bump at home, the Pirates lineup stacking up well against a pitcher who hasn't been stretched out yet, and PNC Park rocking for a Sunday matinee. This just feels like Pittsburgh's game to control. As our first pick for this matchup, the Pittsburgh Pirates money line is our full game side pick. You don't need me to tell you that last night's series game was an absolute slugfest. 15 total runs in 13 innings, with the Rays exploding for 5 runs in the 5th inning after the rain delay, the Pirates countering with runs of their own in the 8th and 11th, and Cedric Mullins eventually ending it with a 2-run bomb in the 13th. That game alone tells you a lot about the current state of both bullpens and how this series has been unfolding. When you look at Pittsburgh's games this season as a whole, the trend is screaming at you. Through 21 games, the over has cashed in 12 of them, which comes out to about 57%, and that's not a small sample size quirk at this point. This is a team that's been involved in high-scoring affairs consistently, and the reasons are structural, not random. Let me explain why this matchup is set up perfectly for another one of those games. McClanahan's pitch count is being carefully monitored, and the Rays have not let him go deeper than 5 innings in any start this season. That means Tampa Bay is going to be leaning on its bullpen for at least 4 or 5 innings today, and that bullpen is held together with duct tape right now. Edwin Uceda is on the 15-day injured list with a shoulder impingement, and his rehab outing didn't go well, so he's dealing with lingering soreness. Garrett Cleavinger is on the injured list with calf tightness, Joe Boyle is out with an elbow strain, and Steven Wilson has been on the 60-day injured list with a back issue since before the season started. That's multiple key arms just gone. The guys who are available haven't exactly been lights out either. Ian Seymour, who actually pitched well last night in relief, still carries an 8.68 earned run average on the season after a disastrous opening day. Yoendris Gomez has a 7.3 earned run average through his first 6 outings and has given up at least 1 run in 5 of them. When you're asking these arms to cover significant innings against a lineup as deep as Pittsburgh's, you're inviting crooked numbers. And here's the flip side. Keller is the better pitcher in this matchup by a wide margin, but even he isn't immune to giving up some runs. His last start against Washington saw 4 earned runs, and the Nationals jumped him early with the first 5 batters reaching base. He walked 4 that night, something he's done twice already in 4 starts. A solid outing from Keller might mean 2 or 3 runs, not a shutdown, and that's fine for this kind of total. The Rays, despite the pitching concerns, have bats that can do damage. Yandy Diaz is hitting .354 with a .446 on-base percentage and .532 slugging, sitting second in all of baseball in batting average and riding an 8-game hitting streak. Junior Caminero has 4 homers and drove in a run with an RBI double last night. Chandler Simpson is batting .338 and getting on base consistently. Jonathan Aranda had 2 hits last night and has been a sneaky good contributor all year. This isn't a Tampa lineup that's going to roll over and die quietly even against a quality arm like Keller. When you combine everything, the math just works in favor of runs. A starter on one side who's being limited in how deep he can go, a depleted bullpen behind him with multiple arms carrying bloated earned run averages, a lineup on the home side that's revamped and hitting with real power, a road lineup that features one of the best pure hitters in the American League in Diaz, and several other contributors who can square up mistakes, and a series that's already produced 6 runs and 15 runs in the first 2 games. Yesterday's rain-delayed extra innings marathon probably taxed both bullpens even further, which only adds more fuel. The conditions are ripe for both sides to put up crooked numbers, especially in the middle and late innings when this game shifts from starters to relievers. Sunday afternoon baseball at PNC Park has a way of producing action, and everything about this matchup points toward the ball carrying and both teams contributing to the scoreboard. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. San Francisco Giants versus Washington Nationals. Sometimes the best bet in baseball isn't the team riding a hot streak, it's the team that just got punched in the mouth and is ready to swing back. And that's exactly where we find ourselves with this rubber match at Nationals Park. The Giants have taken the first 2 games of this series, sure, but let's talk about how they won those games, because it tells a much bigger story than the final scores suggest. Friday night was ugly for Washington, a 10-5 loss where the pitching just couldn't contain San Francisco's lineup. But Saturday was the kind of game that leaves a mark on your soul. The Nationals built a lead, were up 5-1 at one point, had the crowd on their feet, had every reason to believe they were about to even this series. Then the Giants clawed back, inning by inning, and the game stretched all the way to 12 innings before San Francisco finally pulled out a 7-6 win. That's the kind of loss that either breaks a team or fuels them, and with this young Nationals roster under first-year manager Blake Butera, the youngest skipper in baseball at just 33, there's an edge to this clubhouse that screams fight. These aren't veterans going through the motions of a long season. C.J. Abrams, James Wood, Dalen Lyle, Brady House, Jacob Young, this group is hungry and they've got something to prove. Wood launched a homer yesterday and drove in 2 runs. Lyle has been putting together quality at-bats all series, collecting 3 hits over the 2 games. Here's the thing people aren't talking about enough, though. The Giants just played a 12-inning marathon. That's not just a loss of energy for the position players, that's a full-on drain on the bullpen. San Francisco used Ryan Walker for 2 innings, Caleb Killian for 2 innings, Eric Miller, Ryan Barucki, Matt Gage. Practically the whole relief corps got work in yesterday's game after Adrian Hauser only went 5 2/3 innings. And that's on top of the Game 1 workload where the staff threw 166 pitches. That bullpen is running on fumes heading into Sunday. Now, let's flip it to Washington's side. Yes, their bullpen worked extra innings too, but Cade Cavalli actually gave them 4 solid innings in long relief yesterday, eating innings and keeping them in the game. Richard Lovelady threw 2 scoreless. Gus Varland worked a clean frame. The workload was spread more evenly, and they've got more fresh arms available for today. And honestly, one detail about today's starter that flies under the radar is this. Miles McCollum may be struggling mightily so far in 2026 with an inflated earned run average, but his career numbers pitching at Nationals Park are quietly solid. In 6 career starts at this ballpark, the veteran righty owns a 5-2 record with a 2.79 earned run average. He's comfortable here. The dimensions suit his style, and there's a familiarity with pitching in DC that could settle him down. Is he going to throw a gem? Probably not, but he doesn't have to. He just needs to keep his team close, and with the way this Nationals lineup has been swinging it, scoring 5 and 6 runs in back-to-back games against a Giants pitching staff, Washington has shown they can put up crooked numbers when it matters. Both of these teams sit at 9-12 on the season, so there's no comfort zone for either side. But when you factor in the bullpen exhaustion for San Francisco, the home crowd energy, the bounce-back mentality of a young team that's been in both of these games, and a starter who's historically performed well in this exact building, the picture becomes clear. As our first pick for this matchup, the Washington Nationals money line is our full game side pick. This series has been an absolute batting cage, and there's really no reason to expect Sunday to slow things down. Let's look at what's happened in the first 2 games. Game 1 produced 15 combined runs on 23 total hits. Game 2 went even further, stretching to 12 innings and producing 13 combined runs on an absurd 26 total hits, 16 from the Giants alone. That's 28 runs and 49 hits in 2 games. If that doesn't scream offensive environment, nothing does. And now both bullpens are absolutely gassed heading into the series finale. San Francisco used 6 pitchers yesterday. Washington used 5. The fresh, high-leverage arms that both managers want to lean on in tight spots. They're either unavailable or on short rest. That means we're going to see secondary relievers, mop-up guys getting important innings, and those are exactly the matchups that lead to crooked numbers on the scoreboard. The Giants lineup has been absolutely mashing in this series. Heliot Ramos has been the catalyst, going 4 for 11 with 2 homers and 6 RBIs over the 2 games. Matt Chapman has been scorching the ball, picking up 5 hits including 3 in Friday's win. Luis Arias has been his usual contact machine, collecting 4 hits. This is a lineup that features Willie Adams, Rafael Devers, Young-Hoo Lee. It's deep and it's been locked in all weekend. On the other side, Washington hasn't exactly been quiet. Jose Tina had 3 hits including a double in Game 1 and added another hit and an RBI in Game 2. Wood has been driving the ball with authority. Lyle went deep for a 2-run shot Friday night. Both offenses are seeing the ball well and making hard contact, and that doesn't just evaporate overnight. Now here's the kicker. Today's pitching matchup sets up perfectly for more fireworks. Miles McCollum, whatever his historical comfort level at Nationals Park might be, is carrying an earned run average well north of 11 this season. He's been getting hit hard and often, posting a whip above 2.30, which means he's putting runners on base at an alarming rate. His strikeout numbers are nearly non-existent, so he's relying on batters to put the ball in play, and against a Giants lineup that's been squaring everything up, that's a recipe for runs. And Robbie Ray on the other side. He's been the better pitcher by a mile with that 2.42 earned run average, but he's also shown a tendency to issue free passes, walking 10 batters through his first 4 starts. The former Cy Young winner has the stuff to dominate, no question, but against a Nationals lineup that's been scrappy and aggressive all series, even a quality start from Ray doesn't guarantee a quiet game. You also have to consider the cumulative effect of this series on both pitching staffs. Between the 2 games, Washington's pitchers have thrown 379 total pitches. San Francisco's staff has thrown 300. Arms are tired. Mechanics get sloppy when you're fatigued, and sloppy mechanics lead to hittable pitches, especially from relievers who might be working on back-to-back days. Everything about this setup points to another high-scoring affair. The lineups are hot, the bullpens are thin, the starters both have vulnerabilities that these offenses can exploit, and the first 2 games of this series have established a clear offensive tone. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Kansas City Royals versus New York Yankees. There's something almost poetic about what's unfolding in the Bronx right now, and if you're not paying close attention to this series, you're missing one of the clearest pictures in baseball. The Yankees come into today sitting at 12-9 on the season, holding down second place in the American League East with a kind of quiet, steady confidence that's been building since the first pitch of the year. Kansas City, on the other hand, has stumbled to a painful 7-14 record, sitting dead last in the American League Central, and honestly, they've looked every bit of that record, especially away from home where they're just 2-7. That road number isn't just a footnote, it's the kind of stat that tells you a team is genuinely struggling to compete when the crowd isn't on their side. This isn't some random early season matchup between 2 teams still figuring things out either. What we've watched play out in the first 2 games of this series paints a vivid picture of where these 2 clubs stand right now. Friday night, the Yankees handled business with a clean 4-2 win behind strong pitching and timely hitting, and then Saturday, well, Saturday was something else entirely. 13-4. That's not a competitive baseball game, that's a statement. Cody Bellinger went absolutely off in that one, launching 2 home runs and driving in 5 runs all by himself. And when a guy like Bellinger gets into one of those zones where every swing feels dangerous, it changes the energy of an entire lineup. Ben Rice chipped in a homer of his own. The Yankees piled up 11 hits, committed 0 errors, and the whole operation just looked clean from top to bottom. Meanwhile, Kansas City's starter got pulled after 4 innings and their bullpen got lit up for 6 more earned runs the rest of the way. It was one of those games where you could feel the outcome settling in by the 3rd inning. And here's the thing that really jumps out though, this isn't just a weekend blip on the radar. If you scroll back through the recent head-to-head history between these 2 clubs, the Yankees have owned Kansas City going all the way back through last season's meetings. Every single matchup from 2025 into 2026 has gone New York's way. And that kind of sustained one-sided dominance doesn't happen by accident. It speaks to a real, tangible talent gap that shows up every time these rosters line up against each other, and there's no reason to believe today is where that pattern suddenly breaks. The pitching matchup today matters a lot, so let's get into it. Cole Ragans takes the ball for the Royals, and look, nobody's going to sit here and tell you Ragans isn't talented. The guy finished 4th in Cy Young voting back in 2024, and when he's locked in and healthy, his fastball and his ability to miss bats can be genuinely elite. But that phrase, when he's healthy, has basically become the caveat that follows his name everywhere he goes at this point. He missed the vast majority of 2025, throwing only 61 innings across 13 starts because a groin strain turned into a rotator cuff issue that shelved him for 3 months on the 60-day injured list. He came back in September and looked sharp in 3 starts, but that's a tiny window of production sandwiched between months of rehab and uncertainty. This year he's 0-3 with a 3.78 earned run average, and while that earned run average looks respectable enough on the surface, the underlying story is more complicated. Earlier this month against Cleveland, he took a 92-mile-per-hour comebacker directly off his pitching thumb, which forced him out of that start in the first inning. He was diagnosed with a left thumb contusion, and even though he said he was fine and came back for his next turn, you always have to wonder how much something like that lingers, especially for a pitcher who relies on feel and command to complement his velocity. His strikeout rate has dropped noticeably from where it was during his breakout 2024 season, and his most recent outing against Atlanta was rough. 4 runs on 6 hits, including 3 home runs surrendered in just 4 innings of work. There's a version of Ragans that can shut down any lineup in baseball, but we haven't seen that version show up consistently this year. And sending him into Yankee Stadium against a lineup that just hung 13 runs on the board yesterday feels like asking a lot. The Yankees counter with Ryan Weathers, and this is where it gets interesting. Weathers carries a 4.29 earned run average and an 0-2 record, which doesn't exactly jump off the page if you're just glancing at the numbers. But context matters so much here. This guy has racked up 7 or more strikeouts in 3 of his 4 starts this season, posting an impressive 28-7 strikeout-to-walk ratio through 21 innings. That ratio tells you the stuff is real, the swing and miss ability is very much there, and when he's locating, hitters have a hard time squaring him up. His earned run average got inflated largely because of one disastrous opening inning against the Angels, where he gave up 3 consecutive home runs right out of the gate, and if you pull that one nightmare stretch out of the equation, his numbers look dramatically different. Earlier in the year, he went 8 innings, giving up just 1 run against the Athletics, and multiple analysts have pointed out that his underlying metrics suggest he's been pitching significantly better than that surface earned run average would have you believe. There's a cool backstory here too, one of those little baseball details that makes you smile. Weathers is the son of David Weathers, who won a World Series with the Yankees back in 1996, so there's a family connection to the Pinstripes that goes back 3 decades. He was acquired from the Marlins this past January, and he's been eager to prove he belongs in this rotation long-term, and pitching at home in front of the Yankee Stadium crowd on a Sunday afternoon with his team riding momentum from 2 straight wins feels like the kind of spot where a young pitcher can really deliver. Kansas City's problems go well beyond just the pitching matchup, though. Their offense has been struggling to generate anything resembling consistent production all season long. Vinny Pasquantino is hitting just .165, which for a guy who's supposed to anchor the middle of your lineup is honestly alarming at this point in April. Bobby Witt Jr. has been relatively quiet, and while everybody knows the talent is there, he hasn't been able to carry a lineup that desperately needs him to. The team's slugging percentage sits at just .346, which tells you they're not scaring anybody with power, and their record in day games is a dismal 3-7, which matters because this is a 1:35 afternoon start. Isaac Collins, their left fielder, has been dealing with a right knee contusion after crashing into the stands in Detroit earlier this week, and he hasn't been in the starting lineup since. Salvador Perez sat out yesterday's game for what was described as a mental breather, and look, when your franchise catcher, a guy who's been the heart and soul of your organization for over a decade, needs that kind of reset in mid-April, it says something about where the team's energy level is right now. The bullpen situation for Kansas City is genuinely concerning too. We saw Mitch Spence come in yesterday and get absolutely hammered for 6 earned runs across 4 innings of relief, and that's not an isolated incident for a relief corps that's been stretched thin. Carlos Estevez is on the injured list with an ankle issue, James MacArthur has been out with elbow inflammation, and Alec Marsh is done for the entire year after shoulder surgery. That's a lot of missing arms for a pitching staff that was already walking a tightrope. The Yankees, meanwhile, are at home where they play with a different energy, surrounded by a lineup that features Aaron Judge in the middle of it every single day. Even when Judge goes hitless, like he did yesterday going 0 for 4 with a couple of walks, the mere fact that he's standing in the box changes how opposing pitchers have to approach everybody else around him. Bellinger is swinging the bat with serious confidence after that monster game, and the depth throughout this lineup, from Jose Caballero filling in capably at shortstop while Anthony Volpe rehabs his shoulder to Rice providing pop at first base, gives the Yankees options that Kansas City simply can't match right now. New York has won 11 of 19 games when favored this season, which tells you the market respects this roster, and for good reason. As our first pick for this matchup, the New York Yankees money line is our full game side pick. When you start thinking about how many runs are actually going to cross the plate in this one, you have to look at the full picture of what's been happening in this series, and with both of these pitching staffs lately. Yesterday's game produced 17 combined runs. Friday's game was tighter at 6 total, but even that one featured some late-inning action that could have easily pushed the scoring higher with a bounce or 2 going differently. The pattern we're watching develop is a Royals pitching staff that's been leaking runs at a concerning rate and a New York offense that has serious thump when it gets going. Both starters today are left-handed, which creates an interesting dynamic when you think about how lineups are constructed against southpaws. Weathers, as we already covered, has electric stuff, but he's prone to the occasional blow-up inning, the kind of stretch where 3 or 4 runs come across before anybody even has time to get warmed up in the bullpen. 3 of his 4 starts have featured at least one inning where he got into real trouble, and while he's recovered well from those rough patches, the runs still count on the scoreboard. Ragans, despite the solid earned run average number, has been susceptible to the long ball this year too, coughing up 3 home runs in his most recent start against Atlanta. When you have 2 pitchers who can both get hit hard in stretches, and they're throwing in Yankee Stadium with that famously short right field porch where fly balls have a way of disappearing over the fence, the conditions are set up for some fireworks. The Yankees have launched 23 home runs as a team through roughly 20 games, and they don't need to string together patient rallies to score in bunches. They can change a game with one swing. Look at what Bellinger did yesterday. 2 swings of the bat accounted for a huge chunk of the offense, and when a lineup can generate runs that quickly and that explosively, it puts constant pressure on every pitcher who steps on the mound against them. That kind of power concentrated in one order creates a threat that never goes away, especially against a guy like Ragans who's still working his way back to full command after the thumb scare and the extended injury absence that caused him most of 2025. You can't just look at one side of the equation here though. Even though the Royals' offense has been inconsistent overall, they've shown they can put up crooked numbers in certain games. Carter Jensen leads the team with 14 hits and launched a 2-run homer yesterday, which is a nice sign of life from a young player trying to establish himself. Kansas City lost a wild 10-9 game against Detroit just last week, and while that's obviously a loss, it shows that when the runs start flowing in Royals games, things tend to get out of hand in both directions. The team earned run average for Kansas City's pitching staff sits at 4.08, and their bullpen has been especially leaky, which means that even in games where the starter holds things together for the first few innings, the middle and late innings have a way of opening up and inviting a whole lot of traffic on the base paths. Think about the way yesterday's game unfolded for a second. It was scoreless through 2 full innings, and then the Yankees exploded for 5 in the 3rd and never looked back, piling on runs in 4 separate innings throughout the game. The Royals tacked on 4 of their own in the later innings once the outcome was already decided, and that actually tells you something important. Both lineups were active at the plate. The margin just kept widening because Kansas City's pitching couldn't stop the bleeding. When both offenses are engaged but one pitching staff can't hold things down, you get exactly the kind of high-scoring, high-action game that makes the over attractive. Weathers is the kind of pitcher who might give you 5 or 6 strong innings loaded with strikeouts, but he also might get caught in one bad inning that puts 3 or 4 runs on the board before you can blink. In a park like Yankee Stadium, where routine fly balls to right field have a habit of carrying just far enough to clear the wall, there's always the chance for a crooked number even against a pitcher who's dealing overall. Ragans, for his part, has been giving up louder contact this year. His barrel rate allowed is elevated compared to his 2024 numbers, and his command hasn't been nearly as sharp as it was during his Cy Young caliber peak. The version of Ragans who was dotting corners and missing bats at an elite clip is still in there somewhere, but right now the execution isn't matching the talent, and that's a recipe for runs to come across in bunches. When you factor in a depleted Royals bullpen that just got shredded for 6 runs yesterday, the Yankees' ability to generate big innings through home run power, the short porch working in favor of power hitters, and 2 starters who each carry real blow-up potential mixed in with their good stuff. This game has all the ingredients for a combined line that pushes well past what the books have set. Recent games involving both of these teams have produced plenty of crooked numbers, from the Yankees' 11-10 win over the Angels earlier in the week to the Royals' 10-9 loss in Detroit, and today's setup feels like another game where the bats are going to leave their mark on the final score. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Baltimore Orioles versus Cleveland Guardians. There's something happening in Cleveland right now that you can feel even through a screen, and it's the kind of momentum that doesn't show up on a stat sheet. The Guardians are hosting this series at Progressive Field, a place that's been rocking since opening weekend, and they've already taken 2 of the first 3 games from Baltimore heading into today's finale. Think about that for a second. This isn't a fluke stretch or some soft schedule padding. This is a Cleveland team sitting at 12-10 and genuinely playing with an edge that they've carried since the jump. Stephen Vought's group has an identity, and it revolves around pitching, contact, defense, and making life miserable for opposing lineups. Meanwhile, Baltimore rolls in at 10-11, and honestly, it feels worse than that record suggests. The Orioles came into 2026 with massive expectations after loading up the roster in the offseason, signing Pete Alonso to a 5-year deal, bringing in Taylor Ward, Chris Bassett, Shane Baz, and closer Ryan Helsley. On paper, scary. In reality, the injury bug hasn't just bitten this team, it's set up a permanent residence in the clubhouse. Let's start with the obvious. Adley Rutschman, the emotional and tactical heartbeat of this Orioles lineup, is sitting on the injured list with left ankle inflammation. He's been out since April 10th, and while the reports say he's making progress, running, catching bullpen sessions, doing drills, there's no firm return date. You lose Rutschman and you don't just lose a bat, you lose game calling, you lose framing, you lose the guy who makes every single pitcher on that staff better. That void is real, and it's been felt. But it doesn't stop there. Jordan Westburg, who was supposed to anchor third base, has been on the 60-day injured list since early April with a partial UCL tear in his throwing elbow. He's not eligible to come back until late May at the earliest. Jackson Holliday, their starting second baseman, broke his hamate bone the first day of spring training and has been slowly working his way back through rehab. And let's not forget Zach Eflin, who lasted exactly one start before his elbow gave out, leading to Tommy John surgery that ended his entire season. That's 4 significant contributors gone or severely limited for a team that already finished last in the American League East in 2025 with a 75-87 record. Now compare that to what Cleveland is putting out there. Jose Ramirez has been on an absolute tear, homering in 3 of his last 4 games, and he's playing with the kind of swagger that makes him one of the most dangerous hitters in all of baseball. Steven Kwan continues to be a contact machine, leading the team with 17 hits, getting on base and creating chaos at the top of the lineup. Chase DeLauder, the young outfielder, already has 5 home runs and is flashing the kind of raw power that makes pitchers uncomfortable every time he steps in. Even Daniel Schneemann, the utility guy, launched a grand slam just 2 games ago in this very series. This Cleveland roster is deep, it's healthy, and it's playing at home where the energy has been palpable all season. Today's starter for Cleveland is Joey Cantillo, the 26-year-old lefty who's been quietly putting together a strong early campaign. He finished last September on fire, earning American League Rookie of the Month honors, and he's carried that confidence right into this year. His ability to keep hitters off balance with a devastating changeup and elite extension, the ball practically arrives before hitters finish processing the pitch, makes him a nightmare for lineups already struggling to string together quality at-bats. His team has gone 3-1 in his starts this season, and there's a real comfort level when he's on the mound. Baltimore sends Trevor Rogers to the hill, and look, Rogers had an incredible 2025. That 1.81 earned run average last year was historic for the franchise. But here's the thing, this is a completely different situation. He's pitching on the road, in a hostile ballpark, with a banged-up lineup behind him, and the Orioles have been underdogs every single time he started this season. That tells you something about how the market views the support around him. Rogers is talented, no question, but even the best arms need run support, and this Orioles offense has been inconsistent at best without Rutschman anchoring it. Cleveland has the healthier roster, the home field, the momentum of winning 2 of 3 already in this series, and a lineup that's genuinely clicking from top to bottom. As our first pick for this matchup, the Cleveland Guardians money line is our full game side pick. You know what's been fascinating about this 4-game series in Cleveland? The scoring, or more accurately, the lack of it. Game 1 ended 4-2. Game 3, same story, 4-2. And even Game 2, which finished 6-4, was actually scoreless through the first 6 innings before everything broke loose in 2 wild late frames. That's the pattern here, and it's not random. Both teams are built in ways that naturally suppress offense, and today's pitching matchup only amplifies that. You've got 2 left-handers on the mound, Cantillo for Cleveland and Rogers for Baltimore, and both of them have the kind of arsenals that make lineups uncomfortable. Cantillo's changeup is elite. Hitters batted just 165 against it last season, and his extension creates a deceptive tunnel effect that shortens reaction time. Rogers, for all the questions about his run support today, is still a pitcher who posted historically great numbers for the Orioles last year and carries a 3.04 earned run average into this start. He's not going to get shelled. When you have two competent lefties dealing, especially in April when bats are still warming up and timing isn't fully locked in, you tend to get a lot of weak contact, a lot of defensive outs, and a lot of low-scoring frames. Progressive Field isn't some bandbox either. It plays relatively neutral, maybe even slightly pitcher-friendly in April when the lake effect keeps the air dense and the ball heavy. Home runs don't fly out of there the way they do in places like Cincinnati or Colorado. The Orioles' offensive issues run deeper than just the ballpark, though. Without Rutschman behind the plate, this lineup loses its anchor. Without Westberg and Holiday in the infield, they're running out replacement-level bats in key spots. Baltimore has actually hit the under in 30 of their last 50 games, which is a trend that predates this series and speaks to something structural about how this team generates, or fails to generate, consistent offense. Jeremiah Jackson has been a bright spot, sure, hitting .340 with some clutch homers, but one hot bat doesn't change the broader offensive profile of a lineup missing 3 of its projected starters. On Cleveland's side, the Guardians are a contact-first team. They don't chase crooked numbers. They manufacture runs, play small ball, and rely on pitching and defense. That philosophy naturally keeps games tight. Vogt's clubs aren't trying to slug their way to wins, they're trying to suffocate you with 7 innings of quality starting pitching and then hand the ball to a bullpen that finishes the job. When both sides are wired to play low-event baseball, and both starting pitchers have the stuff to keep lineups guessing, the recipe for a quiet afternoon at Progressive Field is right there. 2 of the 3 games this series have landed comfortably in low-scoring territory, and today's pitching matchup might be the most conducive to a pitcher's duel of the entire set. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Milwaukee Brewers versus Miami Marlins. There's something about a team staring down a sweep that changes the entire energy of a baseball clubhouse, and that's exactly where Miami finds itself heading into this Sunday finale at Lone Depot Park. The Marlins dropped both games in this series already, falling 7-5 in extras on Friday night and then 5-2 on Saturday afternoon, and you'd think that would make this the easiest fade of the weekend. But here's the thing, sometimes the market gets a little too comfortable kicking a team while it's down. Milwaukee has been the better club overall this season, sitting at 12-8 and holding down second in the National League Central, while Miami has stumbled to 9-12 in a soft National League East. On the surface, that gap looks wide enough to just pencil in the road team and move on with your day. But baseball isn't played on paper, and this game has layers that the final scores from Friday and Saturday don't tell you about. The Brewers are rolling into this series finale without 3 of their most important position players. Jackson Chourio, the guy who was supposed to be the centerpiece of this outfield, is still nursing a fractured left hand, and his return has been pushed all the way back to early May. Christian Yelich, who was slashing .314 with a .375 on base percentage and a .451 slugging before going down, is sidelined with a groin injury. Andrew Vaughn, their first baseman, is out with a hamate bone issue in his hand. That's not a minor tweak to a lineup. That's ripping 3 starting position players out of a batting order and asking the depth pieces to carry the load for an extended stretch on the road. Guys like Bryce Turang and Gary Sanchez have picked up some slack, Turang hitting .321 and Sanchez clubbing 5 homers, and honestly you have to give them credit for that. But there's a real difference between filling in admirably for a few games and sustaining that level of production in a Sunday matinee when your team has already clinched the series. Milwaukee has nothing to play for today beyond professional pride. They've already taken this series, they're packing for Detroit next, and the human nature element of a letdown game after 2 hard-fought wins in the Miami Heat is very real. Meanwhile, Miami is backed into a corner at home. Clayton McCullough's club has been 7-5 at Lone Depot Park this season, and this roster, even with its own injury issues, does not want to get swept on its own floor. It's one of those games where the desperation factor actually matters because these guys are playing in front of their home crowd trying to salvage something from a rough week. The Marlins are banged up too, no question about it. Christopher Morel, their off-season signing at first base, has been out since opening day with an oblique strain. Griffin Conning tore his hamstring and is heading for surgery, gone until June. Kyle Stowers is grinding through a rehab assignment working his way back. But here's what hasn't been hurt: their pitching infrastructure. The Marlins staff is holding a .216 opponent batting average, and their bullpen ranks 8th in all of baseball with a 3.3 earned run average. That bullpen is legitimate, and in a game where the starter might only go 5 or 6 innings, having fresh, reliable arms waiting in the late innings gives Miami a genuine safety net that a lot of people are sleeping on. Yuri Perez gets the ball today, and yes, his 5.40 earned run average and 5.71 FIP look ugly at first glance. But context matters so much with young arms. Perez just turned 23 years old. He throws a 98-mile-per-hour fastball. He's working with a sweeper that generated a 22% swinging strike rate against righties last season, and a harder slider that did the same against lefties. This kid has 5 pitches in his arsenal. He's 2 years removed from Tommy John surgery and still finding his rhythm, but his stuff is the kind of stuff that can shut down any lineup on any given afternoon. And here's a detail that should matter to anyone paying attention. In 2 career starts against Milwaukee, Perez owns a 3.72 earned run average with 13 strikeouts across 9 2/3 innings. He's been a different pitcher against this exact team. Jacob Misiorowski is fascinating in his own right, a fireballing 24-year-old with 33 strikeouts in 21 2/3 innings and a 13.7 K/9 rate that leads the entire National League. But Misiorowski has always come with command concerns. His walk rate has been a talking point since his minor league days, and while his 4-seam fastball has shown improved command this season, the rest of his arsenal still gets a little wild. And when you're pitching in a game your team has already wrapped up in terms of the series, with a depleted lineup behind you, that volatility becomes a bigger factor than usual. The Marlins have the home crowd, the desperation, the bullpen edge, and a young arm with electric stuff who has historically handled this opponent well. That's a combination you don't see line up this cleanly very often in a series finale, and it makes this game a lot more interesting than the market seems to think it is. As our first pick for this matchup, the Marlins money line is our full game side pick. Lone Depot Park doesn't get talked about enough when it comes to how it shapes the actual outcome of baseball games. This is a ballpark built near sea level in South Florida, where the humidity hangs in the air like a wet blanket and the retractable roof stays closed for roughly 86% of games because of the heat and the rain. That combination does something tangible to the baseball. The ball just doesn't carry here the way it does in most other parks around the league, and if you've ever watched a fly ball die at the warning track in Miami, you know exactly what I'm talking about. According to StatCast's 3-year rolling averages, Lone Depot Park is the 9th toughest venue in Major League Baseball to hit a home run. The outfield dimensions are still deeper than average at most points, and while the fences have been brought in twice since the park opened, the spacious gaps still eat up fly balls that would be souvenirs in Cincinnati or Colorado. Overall, this park ranks in the bottom third of the league for run scoring, and that's not a one-year sample, that's a consistent trend baked into the environment itself. Now layer the pitching matchup on top of that environment. Misiorowski and Perez are both right-handed power arms who generate an enormous number of swings and misses. Misiorowski's 13.7 K/9 rate speaks for itself, and Perez, even in a shaky start to the year, is still racking up strikeouts with that explosive fastball and his wipeout secondary stuff. When 2 pitchers with that kind of pure swing and miss ability go head-to-head inside a ballpark that actively suppresses offense, you're creating a recipe for a low-event game where runs are genuinely hard to come by. It's not just the starters, either. Both bullpens are more than capable of locking things down in the late innings. Miami's relief corps carries that 3.30 earned run average and has been one of the most dependable units in the game this season. Milwaukee's bullpen features Trevor McGill, who already has multiple saves this year, and Abner Uribe, who generated a clutch pickoff to get the Brewers to extras just 2 nights ago. When the starters hand it off, neither team is going to a weakness, which means the scoring window stays compressed from the first pitch through the 9th. And then there's the lineup factor that honestly ties everything together. Between the 2 clubs, you're looking at a combined 8 players on the injured list who would otherwise be in starting lineups. Milwaukee is missing Chourio, Yelich, and Vaughn. Miami is missing Morel, Conine, Stowers, and more. These are not fringe guys, these are the bats that drive offensive production, and their absence compresses the scoring ceiling for both lineups in a meaningful way. The Brewers are averaging 5.4 runs per game this season, but that number has been inflated by some blowout wins, and it was built when the roster was healthier. The Marlins sit at 4.7 runs per game, but they've been trending the wrong direction over their last 10 games, getting outscored overall during that stretch. When you put two depleted lineups inside a park that suppresses runs, with two strikeout-heavy arms on the mound and two solid bullpens behind them, the math just keeps pointing in one direction. Sunday afternoon games in April also tend to produce lower scoring outcomes across the league, partly because of the travel schedule weighing on the visiting team and partly because the emotional energy of a series is usually spent by Game 3. Everything here, the park, the arms, the injuries, the situational context, converges on a quieter, tighter game than a lot of people might expect. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.